The rushes smell of river water, sweet, earthy, a scent that hasn't changed in centuries. In a workshop on the edge of the Norfolk Broads, Thomas Garrett is twisting bulrush into cord. He's 69. His hands move in a rhythm older than factories, older than upholstered furniture, older than the idea that chairs should be soft. This is rush seating, the craft of weaving chair seats from river reeds. When Thomas is gone, almost no one will know how. Rush seating was never luxury work. It was practical, cheap, available. Every rural furniture maker across Britain knew how to do it. You harvested the rushes in late summer when they were tall and green. You dried them for months in the barn. Then you twisted and wove them into seats that could last 30 years. Windsor chairs, ladder backs, country stools, chapel benches, all of them sat on woven rush. Thomas learned the craft from his father, who learned from his grandfather, who learned from the chair bodger who worked in the woods near their village. My grandfather said rush seating was the difference between sitting and standing, Thomas says. If you couldn't afford upholstery, you had rush. Most people couldn't afford upholstery. The workshop is small, cold in winter. The stone floor never quite warms. Bundles of dried rushes lean against the walls, sorted by length and thickness. Some are pale green, some golden brown, some nearly white where the sun bleached them. A ladder-back chair sits on the bench, upside down. The old rush seat rotted through years ago. Someone brought it to Thomas to repair. He's one of the last people who still knows how. Rush doesn't come from shops. You harvest it yourself. Thomas goes to the same wetland every August, a low-lying area near the River Bure where bulrush and soft rush grow thick along the banks. He uses a sickle, sharp, curved, the same tool his grandfather used. You cut the rushes near the base, leaving the roots intact so they'll grow back next year. You gather them into bundles and tie them with twine. Then you carry them home and spread them out to dry. Green rush is too weak, Thomas says. It tears when you twist it. You need it dried, but not brittle. The timing is everything. Too dry and it snaps. Too damp and it rots the wood it's woven around. You learn by feel, by experience, by ruining 100 chair seats until your hands understand the difference. The process starts with soaking. Thomas fills a long trough with water and submerges the dried rushes for 10 minutes, just enough to make them pliable again. While they soak, he examines the chair frame. Rush seating requires 4 rails, front, back, and 2 sides. The corners must be square. The rails must be strong. If the wood is weak, the tension of the weaving will crack it. He pulls the rushes from the water and shakes them out. They're darker now, heavier, ready. Then he begins twisting. 2 rushes together rolled between his palms, forming a tight cord. The twist must be even, consistent. If it's too loose, the seat will sag. If it's too tight, it won't bend around the corners. Thomas doesn't measure. He feels it. His hands know the right tension the way a musician knows the right note. Have you seen chairs with rush seats? Do you remember when they were common? The weaving follows a specific pattern. You start at the front left corner, tie the twisted rush to the rail, then wrap it diagonally across to the back right corner, under the rail, over the top, around again. Front right to back left to front right. Over and over, building layers. The pattern creates a figure 8 when viewed from above. Each wrap crosses the previous one, locking the structure together. As the seat fills in, the rushes stack on top of each other, forming a thick, padded surface. It looks simple, Thomas says, but the corners are where the skill shows. At each corner, the rush must turn smoothly without bunching. The tension must stay even. If one corner is tighter than the others, the whole seat warps. Thomas learned this by failing. "I wove my first seat when I was 14, he says. "It looked terrible, lumpy, uneven. My father made me cut it out and start again." He started again 17 times before his father said it was good enough. The work is slow. A simple stool seat takes 3 hours. A ladder-back chair takes 6. A large armchair can take 2 days. You can't rush it. Every wrap must be placed carefully. Every twist must be firm. Every corner must be checked. Thomas works in silence. The only sound is rush against wood, the creak of the frame, the occasional scrape of his stool on the stone floor. Outside, a car passes. The engine fades. Inside, the rhythm continues. Rush seating wasn't just for chairs. It was also used for storage baskets, kneeling mats, and cradle bottoms. Anything that needed a woven surface that could flex without breaking. Thomas still makes kneeling mats occasionally. Church commissions mostly. Congregations restoring old chapel pews want the kneelers done the traditional way. "I made 12 last year for a church in Suffolk," he says. "They paid well, but it took me 4 months." 4 months for 12 kneeling mats. That's the economics of handcraft. You can't compete with factories. You can't compete with foam cushions and synthetic fabrics. You can only offer what machines can't make, something real, made by hand, using materials that grew in the ground. If you've worked with natural materials, what did they teach you? Share below. The decline happened gradually, then suddenly. Factory-made cane seating arrived in the late 1800s, imported from Asia, cheaper, faster, more uniform. Then came bentwood chairs with plywood seats, then upholstered furniture with springs and horsehair. By the 1920s, rush seating was already old-fashioned. By the 1960s, it was almost extinct. Foam cushions, vinyl, plastic webbing, all of it easier, cheaper, more comfortable than woven rush. "My father told me not to learn this," Thomas says. "He said there was no future in it." But Thomas learned anyway. Not because he thought he'd make a living, because he liked the work, the smell of the rushes, the rhythm of the twisting, the satisfaction of seeing a broken chair made usable again. He worked as a carpenter for 40 years. Rush seating was evenings and weekends. Now he's retired, and rush seating is all he does. The knowledge is specific. There are different types of rush. Bull rush, soft rush, hard rush. Each behaves differently when twisted. There are different weaving patterns, standard diagonal, checkerboard for decorative work, double twisted for heavy use. There are different corner techniques, mitered corners for square frames, packed corners for wide seats, reinforced corners for chairs that will be moved often. Thomas knows all of them. He learned most from his father, a few from old books. One technique from a man in Devon he met at a craft fair 30 years ago. "He showed me how to weave a double layer," Thomas says, "for outdoor benches, so water drains through instead of pooling." The man died 15 years ago. Thomas never learned his name, but he still uses the technique. On a gray afternoon in March, Thomas is finishing a seat. It's a Victorian nursing chair, curved frame, elegant proportions. The original rush rotted decades ago. The owner found Thomas through a furniture restorer who didn't know how to do rush work anymore. Thomas has been weaving for 5 hours. The seat is almost complete, just the final corner to pack and tie off. He twists the last 2 rushes together, wraps them around the rail, tucks the end underneath, pulls it tight. Done. He turns the chair upright, sits on it, tests the tension, solid, even, comfortable. It will last another 30 years, maybe longer. Thomas has tried to teach. A woodworker came 3 years ago, wanted to add rush seating to his furniture business. He stayed for a week. He learned the basic pattern, Thomas says, but he couldn't get the corners right. He kept trying to measure everything. Rush seating doesn't work by measurement. You can't use a ruler to determine how tight the twist should be. You can't use a gauge to check corner tension. You learn by doing it wrong over and over until your hands understand what right feels like. The woodworker left frustrated, said he'd stick to upholstery. There are still a few rush seaters in Britain. Thomas knows 2 others, one in Somerset, one in Wales. They're all over 60. None of them have apprentices. The Basket Makers Association still lists rush seating as a traditional skill, but most of the people who practice it now are hobbyists, weekend weavers who make 1 or 2 seats a year. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not the same as knowing the craft in your bones. A hobby is something you do when you feel like it, Thomas says. A trade is something you do because people need it. People don't need rush seating anymore. But Thomas keeps doing it anyway. Do you think skills like this should still be preserved? Or is it enough to let them fade naturally? Tell us what you think. This is not nostalgia. Rush seats were never perfect. They wore out. They attracted insects. They sagged with age and had to be replaced. Foam cushions are better in almost every way. But something is lost when a skill disappears. Not the chairs themselves, the understanding of how rushes grow, how they dry, how they twist, how tension and pattern combine to create a surface that's both flexible and strong. The knowledge that a broken chair doesn't have to be thrown away, that repair is possible, that natural materials can be harvested, worked, and woven into something useful. That knowledge lives in people, and people do not last forever. Thomas works until late afternoon. Then he bundles the leftover rushes, sweeps the floor, covers the soaking trough. The workshop goes quiet. Tomorrow he'll return for as long as he can. Under this video there's a subscribe button. It's a small action, but it helps document trades that are still alive, even if only quietly. If craftsmanship still matters to you, if knowledge carried in hands feels worth remembering, subscribing simply means you want these stories recorded while they still can be. And before you leave, tell us where you're watching from. Have you seen rush-seated chairs? Do you know where rushes grow in your area? Have you learned a craft from natural materials? Share your experience below. That's how this knowledge stays visible.